April 14th marks the 10th anniversary of the first electoral victory of the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, after the physical departure of Commander Hugo Chavez. And France's top constitutional body has cleared the raising of the state pension age from 62 to 64 and rejected calls for a referendum by political opponents. In a new episode of violence, Israeli forces in Palestine attacked Muslim worshippers gathered at the Al-Aqsa mosque in the occupied Jerusalem. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. April 14th marks the 10th anniversary of the first electoral victory of the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, after the physical departure of Commander Hugo Chavez. With a humble upbringing, Nicolás Maduro, who was a bus driver, stood out as a union leader before being elected national lawmaker in the year 2000. During the presidency of Hugo Chavez, he also served as president of the National Assembly, foreign affairs minister, and vice president of the Republic. On April 14, 2013, after the physical departure of the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez, Venezuelans held general elections and elected Nicolás Maduro Moros as president of the Republic, winning the post with 50.61% of the votes for the 2013-2019 term. Maduro won 2 elections, but his stay in office has not been an easy one. He had a first term full of constant attacks on the sovereignty of the country, assassination attempts, deepening of the blockade, and repeated interference, and his resilience shows the strength and conviction of President Maduro, as well as the trust of the Venezuelan people in his leadership. According to political observers, these U.S. hostile actions were confronted with diplomacy of peace that characterizes the people of Venezuela. On May 20th, 2018, a second election was held where Maduro won 67.84% of the votes for the 2019-2025 term. And Peru once again calling Mexico, Colombia, and Chile to hand over the pro-tempore presidency of the Pacific Alliance to the Indian nation without further delay, and stated that if a state fails to do so, it will incur an international responsibility. The Mexican government, under the presidency of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has refused to hand over the leadership of the economic and trade bloc to Peru because it considers that the Indian nation, there is a spurious government under the President Dina Boluarte, who assumed power after the dismissal in December of Pedro Castillo. The Peruvian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that the government of Boluarte proposed carrying out diplomatic consultations with the members of the Pacific Alliance in order to carry out the transfer of the pro-tempore presidency of the group, which was due to be handed over by Mexico to Peru in November. The Pacific Alliance is an integration mechanism based on the free movement of goods, services, and capital that seeks to become a power, targeting the markets of Asia. In Bolivia, the defense minister, Edmundo Novillo, confirmed that from Friday, a battalion of 170 military personnel will reinforce the fight against this fuel smuggling in 12 Bolivian border municipalities identified as illegal fuel exit points. The senior official explained that the measure is part of a package of measures put in place by the governments to combat this illicit trade, and that the armed forces will mobilize their troops to work together with inspectors from the National Hydrocarbons Agency. Novillo described that this contingent will be made up of 34 command instructors in each municipality and 136 troops from troop personnel. He also said that land, river, and even air patrols will be carried out if necessary in all border areas. For his part, the Minister of Hydrocarbons, Franklin Molina, during the press conference estimated that the set of actions put into practice as of Friday will bring savings for Bolivia of up to $1 billion a year. On Thursday, the National Migration Institute of Mexico announced the discovery of 209 asylum seekers in an abandoned trailer, accounting as the second such incident in 2023. The report indicates that agents of the institution and the National Guard located the vehicle on a highway near the town of Nuevo Teapa in the state of Veracruz. Among the asylum seekers were 161 adults from Guatemala, 6 from Honduras and El Salvador, respectively, and 5 from Ecuador, according to the authorities. The asylum seekers were trying to reach the U.S. border, and after the officers' intervention, they were transferred to an immigration station where they will undergo the corresponding procedures to be repatriated. Among them are also 25 unaccompanied minors who will be under the guardianship of the System for Integral Family Development. On March the 6th, Mexican authorities found 343 migrants, including 103 unaccompanied minors, in an abandoned freight truck container on the side of a highway also in Veracruz. On Friday, the presidents of China, Xi Jinping, and Brazil, Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, signed several agreements on bilateral relations to enhance economic cooperation. The agreements cover a variety of areas such as tourism, food, environment, science and technology, airspace, finance, among others. As part of his talks with his Chinese counterpart, Lula called for the creation of financial mechanisms outside the dollar area to counteract organizations that grant extortionate loans to developing countries. As part of his agenda, the Brazilian head of state intends to propose a plan for a peaceful solution to the conflict in Ukraine, as Brazil is a neutral country on the conflict. Lula's visit to China, the third one as president of Brazil and the first during his current term, precedes the 15th meeting of the BRICS group, made up of Brazil, China, India and Russia, to be held in August 2023, which, according to Lula, will see the return of Brazil to the current economic and geopolitical panorama. Also on Friday, and as part of his official visit, Lula paid homage to the Chinese martyrs with a floral tribute at the Monument to the People's Heroes in Beijing, accompanied by Chinese and Brazilian officials, fulfilling one of its first commitments. The Monument to the People's Heroes is a 10-story obelisk that was erected as a national monument of China to the martyrs of the revolutionary struggle during the 19th and 20th centuries, and is a piece of the Tiananmen Square in Beijing, in front of the mausoleum of Mao Zedong. Priorly on Thursday, Lula also attended the inauguration ceremony of the former Brazilian president Dilma Rousseff as president of the BRICS Development Bank. To conclude his agenda in China, both presidents will hold a gift exchange ceremony and an official dinner. Now we move on to other topics. In Guatemala, during the 2022 to 2023 forest fire season, more than 3,000 hectares have been ravaged in the country, according to the Executive Secretariat of the National Coordinator for Disaster Reduction. In its report, the disaster management further detailed that the consumption of these hectares derived from 496 claims registered in the national territory. Of the total, 399 were reported as forest, while the other 97 were reported as non-forest. As of this Friday, the Secretariat accounted for 35 active fires located in the departments of Baja Verapaz, Chiquimula, El Progreso, Guatemala, Petén, Quiché, Sololá, and Zacapa. In this sense, the Emergency Response Coordination Center advised the population not to make unnecessary bonfires in wooded areas, as this could lead to a forest fire of great magnitude. We have more information, but as you know, you can follow us on our TikTok at TeleSUR English, in which you will be seeing the news in other formats and also the news updates. More news now. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, France's top constitutional body has cleared the raising of the state pension age from 62 to 64 and rejected calls for a referendum by political opponents. Despite the Constitutional Council ruling, the body has said some articles in the bill had legal flaws. In March, the government used a special constitutional power to force through the reforms without a vote, and 12 days of protests have been held against the reforms since January. A day of high tension is expected in the streets, and security forces are already deployed in several landmark locations. On the eve of the 13th day of protest against the reform, crowds gather in different parts of the country. Now we address other topics. On Friday, Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban asserted that Ukraine is a financially non-existent country, emphasizing that as soon as the United States and Europe stop supporting the administration of Volodymyr Zelensky, the armed conflict will end. The Hungarian Prime Minister also said that Europe spends tens of billions of dollars to support Ukraine, noting that the European economy itself lacks such financing, and he stressed that this cannot continue indefinitely. Orban also pointed out that Hungary also participates in the financing of Ukraine through the general budgets of the European Union, despite which the situation of the Hungarian minority in Transcarpathia is steadily deteriorating. In January, the European Union bloc signed a memorandum to provide Ukraine with $18 billion in macro-financial assistance over 2023. On Friday in Beijing, the Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang met with his German counterpart, Annalena Baerbock, to discuss issues of mutual interest, such as the Ukrainian and Taiwanese crisis. During the meeting, Qin said that his nation defends the idea that the only way to resolve the Ukrainian crisis is to promote peace and talks, and stressed that regarding the export of military items, China is adopting a responsible attitude and will not provide weapons to relevant parties in the conflict, as it will manage and control the export of dual-use items in accordance with the law. On the other hand, European Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock urged Beijing to ask Russia to halt its military operations in Ukraine. For her part, Baerbock stressed Germany abides by the One Chinese policy, according to which Beijing is recognized as the sole legitimate government of China, and Berlin does not maintain diplomatic relations with Taiwan. And China's Foreign Minister Qin Gang also emphasized that the Ukraine crisis has become a profound lesson that deserves deep reflection by all parties.
Change views with the German Foreign Minister on the Ukraine issue. China has always believed that the only way out of the crisis in Ukraine is to persuade peace and promote talks. Since the outbreak of the crisis, President Xi Jinping has put forward 4 common points and 3 points of reflection, calling for a political solution. Not long ago, China released its position on a political solution to the crisis in Ukraine, the goal of which is also to promote talks on all nuclear issues.
On Friday, North Korea flight tested a solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time under the supervision of the country's leader Kim Jong-un. According to the Korean Central News Agency, the new missile, named Hwasong-18, is described as the most powerful weapon of North Korean nuclear forces that will enhance counterattack abilities in the face of external threats created by the military activities of the United States and its regional allies. During launching, the missile flew upwards at a steep angle, so to reduce the risk of it accidentally striking neighboring countries, and is believed to have covered a distance of 1,000 kilometers. Experts agree that flown at a regular trajectory, it could cover much longer distances. The governments of Turkey and Egypt announced on Friday that they reached diplomatic agreements during the meeting between the Egyptian Foreign Minister Zamek Shukri and his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Cavusoglu in Ankara. After the meeting, the foreign ministers expressed that they will soon announce the reappointment of ambassadors and a meeting at the highest level between the two nations. Zimmer's presence in the Turkey's capital marks the continuation of the reconciliation process that started with a first handshake between Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the Egyptian head of state Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during the World Cup in Qatar on December 2022. Both nations have been making progress in the recovery of diplomatic ties that had been interrupted for more than a decade after the overthrow of the then president of Egypt and Ankara's ally, Mohamed Morsi.
The issue of increasing the level of representation in the embassy. We are taking concrete steps. We have decided in Cairo to work together on this in the coming months. We will inform you through a joint statement, and until then, I will continue to take action, and let me say that there are no problems.
And the two sides also agreed to cooperate closely to resolve the political crisis in Libya, where the two countries are backing opposing sides.
Concerning Libya, we have a mutual will that Libyan institutions fulfill their responsibilities and that Libya goes through free and fair elections, leading to a government that represents the will of the Libyan people, and that is capable of preserving the unity and security of the Libyan soil, as well as its capacities to serve the interests of our Libyan brothers.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In a new episode of violence, Israeli forces in Palestine on Thursday attacked Muslim worshippers gathered at the Al-Aqsa mosque in the occupied Jerusalem. The Israeli repression took place at one of the gates of the mosque, which is the third holiest site for Muslims. Around 35,000 Palestinian worshippers went to perform their prayers on the 22nd day on the holy month of Ramadan, defying provocations by agents of the occupation regime who were deployed at the gates of the mosque. Last week, Israeli forces stormed the Al-Aqsa mosque, injuring 300 people with rubber bullets, pepper spray and stun grenades, an act condemned by the international community. On Friday, mobilizations began in the capital of Iran to commemorate International Al-Quds Day and support the Palestinian people, as well as to reject the Israeli occupation. Iranians rallied in Tehran, the capital of the Persian nation, chanting the slogan, "Palestine is the focus of the unity of the Islamic world," according to reports from a local news agency. On the matter, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi said that participating in the Al-Quds Day marches is the embodiment of the unity and cohesion of the Islamic nation. The participants also condemned the attack on the Al-Aqsa mosque and its desecration by the Zionist entity that carries out these criminal acts to cover up its internal crisis. Also in Syria, Palestinians held a military parade on the occasion of Al-Quds Day in the Yarmouk refugee camp in the capital Damascus. Local media reported that Palestinian and Syrian popular and official entities commemorated the day with political, artistic and cultural activities that ratified their support for the Palestinian struggle in that occupied city. The International Al-Quds Day is commemorated every year on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the lunar calendar, characterized by fasting by Muslims around the world and the way to enhance Islam's culture, tradition and faith. And the leader of the Popular Front of the Liberation of Palestine and representative of the Islamic Jihad movement in Syria, Abu Ahmad Fuad, reaffirmed that the Palestinian people will never allow the illegal Israeli occupation to erase their cultural and religious heritage.
Living for over 75 years now as refugees in the Yarmouk camp, away from our country and homes. We assert that we want to return to Palestine and that we will not allow the occupation to abuse our Palestinian people in the West Bank, nor will we allow the occupation to change the identity of the Al-Aqsa mosque.
In Yemen, the Houthi Ansarullah movement and the Arab coalition led by Saudi Arabia started on Friday an exchange of almost 900 prisoners of war as part of the negotiation process to end the conflict. Hundreds of relatives gathered outside Zina International Airport to welcome the released prisoners from Aden. The International Committee of the Red Cross specified that the prisoner swap will last 3 days and that 3 will be simultaneous rounds of flights between Aden, controlled by the Saudi coalition, and Zana, controlled by the Houthi Ansarullah movement. The release of prisoners comes after delegations from Saudi Arabia and Oman arrived in Yemen this week to hold talks with the militias. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.